So let's get to the reason why Rev is here. Outside of us looking at his beautiful face, Rev is. I'm gonna pump your ego a little bit. I believe you have made probably my favorite recurring character that any streamer has ever made, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I love Zeeboh.
Means a lot.
I love Zeeboh.
He loves you.
Do you have the mask with you by chance?
On standby, always. It sits right there on my boom arm.
I love Zeeboh.
I was about to say, do you sleep with it like under your pillow? Does your wife like slide her arm and she's like, "Baby, it's snuggle
Funny
time."
story.
Oh, God.
Anytime I do a Zeeboh's Funhouse, she takes the kids and goes visits her family for the night. It freaks her out. It freaks her out just for me to be in character, because the laugh, she'll hear the laugh from like a distance, like through the rest of the house, and it freaks her smooth out.
Oh,
like
no.
she can't be here. My kids love it.
I bet. I mean, yeah, like Dad does a crazy character. This is great.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like my daughter actually loves clowns now because of it. Like she loves Zombieland. She's 3 and she loves Zombieland because every time we talk about it, she goes, "That's the one with the zombie clown."
So where did you
again? Don't do this to me.
Where did you come up with the character?
Okay, so it's actually a funny story. I decided one time back when like I had first started streaming, well, maybe not first, but like pretty close. I was gonna start playing Dead by Daylight because my buddy and Angry Dwarf King kept suggesting it, and I watched him play it. I'm like, that looks fun, especially playing the killer because I grew up loving horror movies, so that was like huge for me, especially considering they had some licensed characters at that point already. And I after deciding to play it for the first time, I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, I wonder if I can make this more interesting by portraying a character for each killer. And I started with the clown. Well, the next stream for Dead by Daylight, I had painted my face up, and it looked nothing like Zeeboh looks today, like zero. And I decided to do Jigsaw the next one, because the pig on there is Amanda from the Saw movies. Mm-hmm. I decided to do that, so I painted my face up actually to look like the puppet, Billy the puppet. I had like the black lines down here for the mouth and all that. And I got about halfway through it trying to do the imitate Jigsaw's voice, and I was like, man, this is just too much. It was like tearing my throat up because it's like that, do you want to play a game? 3 hours of that hurts.
Do you want to play a game?
It was funny because eventually somebody that was in my chat that was actually a friend of mine I was sitting there saying, I was like, I can't do the voice anymore, and I kind of broke character, and they're like, well, what about the clown like last week? And because there were people there that weren't there the previous week. And so I ran back out, smeared the makeup up, and kind of made it look clownish a little bit. And the next thing I know, before I know it, he becomes a recurring character. And I was doing it like on a semi-regular basis. And then I put up a poll on Instagram, or not a poll, but like suggestions for names. And my buddy Rocker Shocker went with Zeeboh, but with an H at the end, because Zeeboh without the H is actually the name of an evil clown puppet from Are You Afraid of the Dark back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And yeah,
that's right.
And so I was like, all right, we'll slap an H on it just so that way it's like, oh, now we can just sit here and circumvent trademark laws.
Yeah, there you go.
I've used the word circumvent like 100 times tonight, and more times tonight than I've ever used it, I think. But anyways, yeah.
I don't even know what that word means, but I've used it like.
Yeah, it's like
I'm not smart on this podcast.
It's like I'm just like, I don't even know what it means. I'm just hoping everybody assumes I know what I'm talking about and uses the context. But no, yeah. And then so I went with the name Zeeboh, and then after a few different makeup tests, eventually I settled actually on, and a buddy of mine did this artwork for me. I settled on that look with the face paint, the big blue eyebrows, the red hair, and all that. After a while, especially out of Halloween season, that amount of makeup, especially with the beard, because I put it in the beard too, gets expensive and hard to find sometimes, actually. And so I decided after a while, to make the character become more recurring, like easier to do, I switched over, I painted up a Mick Thompson from Slipknot mask and cut the mouth out of it. That's actually the guitarist from Slipknot's mask. Ironically, not the one that looks like that. Is the other guitarist's mask. And I cut it out and I painted it and I put the hairline on it and everything. And now all I do is put some black paint around the eyes, paint the beard a little bit, and I'm done. And it's actually kind of cool because one of the influences for the character is Captain Spaulding from Devil's Rejects, House of a Thousand Corpses and all that. And whenever I take the mask off, to like whenever it starts getting too hot and that black is running down my eyes and like everything just looks like real sketchy, apparently I turn on like huge Captain Spaulding vibes is what I've been told. But yeah, it's been an absolute blast to do, and it
so
literally
it's
just
like two characters at once.
Kind of, yeah, and it's crazy because I actually catch like a second wind because like this thing gets hot, and some y'all don't know this is a closet. I don't have ventilation. That's why there's a giant hole in my door so I can get fresh air, and that's why I was able to paint the walls. But yeah, it was when I take it off and then the makeup's there, I get like a second wind, because I'm cooling off and everything, and it becomes a lot more manic than it is with the mask on, and it's been a ton of fun to do so far. And I typically get a question like, hey, how did you decide to actually start implementing this character? And I was just like, you got to stop getting in your own head about, well, what if it doesn't work? Because that's where a lot of people that come up with like different ideas and stuff, they hit themselves with a brick wall by saying, like, well, what if it doesn't work? Or what if so-and-so judges me? Or like, what if it drives people away? It's like, listen, if it doesn't work, that's one busted stream. It was a couple hours wasted. You'll be fine. You'll move on to the next one. And if people are always like, one of the ones I've gotten is like, but aren't you scared? Like people are going to judge you? Like, people judge you all the time, regardless.
They're going to judge you regardless.
Yeah.
People are judgmental assholes. So just go with it. Go with the creative idea. Give it a shot.
I mean, I get some people that are like, I think you need to shave your beard. Your beard's too big. And then I get people going, dude, your beard is amazing. I love it. It doesn't. You're going to get people that go both ways, right? So I legit, I tune into your streams whenever I can, right? And obviously we're all streamers, so we all have friends that we try to. Whenever I see Zeeboh, I'm like, all right, this is where I'm staying at tonight because I love the character so much. And there's gonna be people that'll like that. That's every Zeeboh stream is a must watch. And then there's gonna be some people, admittedly, go, Zeeboh, I'm not feeling it. I'm gonna watch someone else tonight, and I'll watch him when he's not Zeeboh. You're gonna get both of those. And you're going to get that with every character you do. I get people that won't turn into a JRPG stream. It's not their thing. They don't like it. So I know if I stream JRPG, I'm not going to see certain faces. Lep's got people that specifically watch her for marbles. And if she's not doing marbles, they might not show up, right?
Yeah, I have people that will pop in, like if I'm playing something other than marbles, just to pop in and say hi. And then they're like, well, this is marbles, so okay, bye.
Yeah,
and that's it.
and like
that's fine.
Zeeboh actually has like almost his whole his own whole viewership at certain points, but I think that actually some of that comes along with being primarily Dead by Daylight, because Dead by Daylight has that community where people come in and watch Dead by Daylight, and then you add the character on top of it, and it kind of like changes that up a little bit. But yeah, that's because that's the only time I ever play Dead by Daylight is in the Zeeboh character. And with the few rare occasions of not, that's primarily what I stream as Zeeboh. So it's kind of like both ways,
Right, exactly. So it's funny to me. So I've mentioned this before, but a lot of people probably don't know. I've actually created an alter ego, but it was on YouTube. It was for Halloween 2 years ago. I created a character called Alter. And I kind of brought him back a little bit for this Spooktober, but then I had issues with voice mod, and it was like whenever someone would raid me, I'd go to Alter's Dimension. It was a little button I pushed. I used like a really demonic voice. Lepley got to see it because she saw it with one of my raids. So it was like I had like this big green tint to me. It was awesome.
It was great.
And it was really cool, but then I had issues with voice mod and couldn't keep it up with it. But it started 2 years ago. I made a character, and it was a Halloween event. And so every single week, it was an episode. Like it was a series, like a little mini 5 little episode series where a bunch of my friends played this spooky cult, and they were trying to bring about this dark entity onto the world. And so what they did was they had basically gotten into my head, and every time they cast a spell on me, and it made my character had murderous intent, if you will. And so every person that I ended up killing in some way, one of them basically entered the spirit realm and entered my head. So like it was really cool. Like I'm talking to like myself, but they sent me like voice lines that I put in it, so like they're talking in my head, and it went really well. And then eventually at the end, like I had this big white makeup on with like dark, like I have a new modification I want to do to it, because I didn't like how it looked. It was kind of rushed a little bit due to time. But it was really cool. It's so much fun creating a character, especially if you create one with a backstory to it, because it feels like, you know, it's the most creative you can be. I feel like when you're creating a character, you're customizing a character, you're giving them a backstory. I love it. I love it when people make characters, especially ones that have a meaning behind them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually part of the reason I came up with Zeeboh in the first place was because growing up, like I've told people before, growing up, I didn't watch Disney movies. I watched horror movies. And one of the things I always wanted to do was play as a killer in a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And like this kind of gives me that little bit of, you know, capability to do that. And now it's actually kind of funny. I've turned this into wanting to get Zeeboh into a video game as like almost like an Outlast style video game or something along those lines, where he chases you around a circus or something. And it's honestly got me almost into wanting to look into, you know, work on game development. Mm-hmm. But it's
no.
Or hell, find somebody to license it to. Just be like, hey, you may need a clown. Here you go. But yeah, it's a lot of the reason that the character even exists is strictly because I wanted to be in horror movies growing up, because I was always fascinated with them.
Chris, have y'all two ever thought of like creating not maybe necessarily a character, but have you ever like thought about that type of stuff, like being interested in like some type of character design or something like that?
I've always thought about it. It's just I never know where I would go or where I would even begin with it. Like, I know a couple months back, a friend of mine, he dicked about with a pretend lore for me, which is still in my Discord. If anybody wants to go read that, I don't recommend it. It's like 4,000 pages, no words. Jesus, I can't think English. But yeah, I never know where I would start or where I would end up. Mm-hmm. And my head is never that creative for it, so no, I've always thought about it.
That's kind of my issue, is like I've thought about it and I've considered trying to come up with something, but I get stuck because my problem is I'm never as creative with it as I want to be. But also, like, in my brain, I want to go so many directions with it that I can't actually, like, settle on one thing. I'm like, oh, I want it to be this, and I want it to be this, and I want it to be this. But that doesn't work with this. So what if I did this instead? And I want it to go this way. And then I'm like, well, none of that works together. And I can't just, like, settle on, like, the things to build a cohesive character, which sucks. Because I'd really like to, and I'd like to flesh some stuff out. And I guess that's probably why I like playing D&D, because I can be like all these different characters. But also they do end up completely chaotic. I start one direction and I'm like, all right, this character is going to be a really serious warlock. She's got this like eldritch being like living inside of her, and that's where she gets her powers. And then inevitably, like halfway through, it completely changes and turns into like, hey, this character, yeah, she's like a crazy warlock, but she also picks up lizards and puts them in her pockets, and
I remember that.
And then she's just gold hungry, and all she does is look for gold, and she just wants the treasure all the time. And like that like original like eldritch monstrosity story gets tossed out the window because like I hit a roadblock with it, and I'm like, well, I don't know where else to take this. Oh, hey, look, a lizard. All right, cool. Like, yeah. So that's my problem, is I can't ever just like settle on something. And I really want to do like some kind of cool character, because there's so much stuff that I want to do with my streams. And some of it does involve like different characters or stuff, but I just haven't been able to like solidify anything. Maybe someday I will.
I think one of the creators that I'm friends with that I think does some of the best characters is Yellow Spoon Girl. I don't know if you guys ever watched one of her streams. Obviously, you know, they are very mature streams, of course, but she has a character for she does different types of streams. So she does her IRL streams where she's going out with her friends and stuff like that. Obviously doesn't do that much anymore because of COVID. But then she has her relax, chill, like she wants to be a comedian, right? So she'll have the machines where she's at her desk doing something with like stars or something like that, where she's basically bouncing jokes off to see how they land with the chat and stuff like that. Then she has her nostril streams where it's like almost like a crazier character, right? Like a more out there character, like that holds her phone up like this, and she has all these like obscure thoughts and obscure conversations. And it's crazy to see the distinct differences in the types of streams that she does, and it's become her entire brand. And it's amazing to me because obviously, like, I have conversations with her all the time through Discord and stuff like that. So it's just crazy to me knowing the real Bella, and then knowing Yellow Spoon Girl, and then knowing Nostril Streamer Yellow Spoon Girl. And it's I love how fluid a lot of those characters can be, because there's a very distinct difference in you when you're Revsven playing the indie games, which we're going to get to in just a second, and Revsven playing the horror game as Zeeboh. And I love that distinction. You can tell, okay, this is a different type of stream here, and I like this.
Yeah, it's funny too, because whenever people will come in for like the first time, like I hit a random growth spurt after a deal on TikTok and got a whole slew of new followers on Twitch that had seen a couple of my streams, and I did the first Zeeboh's Funhouse after that. And so many people would come in and they would go to say like, hi, Rev, and they'd be like, wait, what the is going on here? And like somebody in chat would inevitably say something along the lines of, it's like, oh yeah, no, Rev's not here right now, or something like that, because it's like I would like to think that Zeeboh to a degree is like similar personality to me, just cranked up to 11, because I've always felt like watching pro wrestling a lot growing up, I found out that like all the best character work in wrestling was done by people who just took their own personalities and cranked them up to 11. And so that was where I kind of like tried to pull it from, while also taking a little bit of influence from these like type of like clown characters from horror movies past. And yeah, it's two completely different deals. That's why I'm actually working on setting like a whole scene collection of things that are just Zeeboh related. That way he has all of his own stuff instead of just like reusing some of my stuff for it,
Yeah, that makes sense.